All right, it looks like everyone's returning.
Good afternoon, Dr. Lucero.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you. Good afternoon to everybody, or good evening, actually.
Right. Hopefully everyone had an opportunity to get through all the questions. And so what we're going to ask at this time, if you are sharing out for your group, if you'll just raise your hand and Olympia will, and if you can, turn on your camera and then we'll call on you in an orderly fashion.
Okay, I see Alice now. And do you want me to go through all of them at once?
Yeah, if you could just kind of highlight the things that kind of the general sentiment that came out in your group. And then if let's say David Tate was going next, he would say, yeah, we said some things about, and kind of catch on to some of the things that you said, because we'll be submitting a note. So we're just giving a general overview at this time.
All right. So when we're talking about aspirations and hopes, somebody said, what if all the schools were like Strawberry Hill? And what they're talking about is that I think really the sense of ease and comfortability of going into the rooms, they're the right size, the windows open, there's good air quality. And part of that is they're saying it's new. And that theme carried out through all of the questions, and especially when we're talking about our priorities, is that we have a new future focused school. In challenges, there was a lot of concerns over just the mold, the air quality, just the breathability. Many of the schools, the windows don't open. They talked about equity in property for space. So some schools have lots of great space for fields, other schools don't. And part of that is being in an urban environment, but is there a way to do that equity across the board so every school has some good fields to work with? Really with this is a great year to talk about the vision of easy accessibility, because so many parents were driving to school as opposed to taking the school bus. And in many cases, like in Roxbury, there were long lines. So figuring out that ease of access, so it's easy for the parents to come in, pick up or drop off, and then move forward. Also, the whole sense of walkability to the schools, what is it like for the parent who has a stroller as well as a kindergartner and they're walking to school? What are the sidewalks like? How safe is it? What is the traffic concerns like? And there was even a thought here of mirroring some of our surrounding towns that have almost like a campus-like atmosphere where there might be 2 or 3 schools on one property. So everybody who's there is going there with school children in mind, and safety is the top priority. Let me see. The welcome center idea, we really were split. One of them was just like, we can do this virtually. We don't need to have a physical building, to just, something where people can go and ask questions. And then someone pointed out, but virtual doesn't work for everybody. And wouldn't there be nice if there was outward facing welcome center that really could shepherd people through the whole system of getting people registered? So there was both ideas. There's probably merit in both of them, and probably can do some combination. And when talking about funding, what are our top priorities? These are modern buildings. They're up to date with technology. They're accessible. They're healthy buildings, and their safety. The buildings are safe as well. Sharon, did I miss anything? My team? Okay.
Thanks so much, Alice. Next, we'll move to Peter.
Hi, all. I'm Peter Dreyer. A lot of what Alice just said came up in our group as well. and so I'll try not to just repeat everything that she said, but I think we would echo the comments, especially with regard to health and safety. In our group, we had some parents who were in Roxbury, some parents who were in Still Meadow, and parent Clunan, and a parent at West Hill. And I think the general consensus was we had significant concerns about just the basic physical plant of the building, the HVAC system, concerns about mold, concerns about, one of the moms mentioned that she discovered that her child was sitting at a desk that was so rusty that when she put her hand in it, it was covered in rust or pieces of metal. So we're all really focused on that. We also were very focused on issues, not just mold issues, but air conditioning generally. We all know that our kids missed chunks of school in the last few weeks because of a lack of AC. Some of the kids that I know about were eating ice pops regularly in class all day because it was so hot. And that's not necessarily the best atmosphere for learning. So modernized, updated schools, as Alice was talking about, with good air quality and leaks repaired. That's the majority of it. But overall, it's health and safety issues are the priorities. That's what it came down to when we got to the question of priorities. Some of the schools do not feel secure, not just in an air quality way, but in a security way. The playgrounds are easily accessible by anyone driving by. Some of the buildings don't have adequate doors or windows to keep people out. And there isn't, frankly, in the design of many of the buildings, it isn't set up in a way that it's easy to secure. It doesn't have, let's say, a central point of access. On the issue of welcoming new families to Stamford, a suggestion was made, and I think we all agreed that maybe the individual school and or the downtown could coordinate with parents in each grade, either through like in our school, the PTO, or through the governance council or something like that, but could coordinate so that each grade had parents to volunteer either to be acting as a welcoming committee or who could partner with new families to help get them through school and facilitate. On funding, again, priorities came back to health and safety again. We understand that there could be exorbitant costs involved, and that's why kind of the basics are what we're concerned about. On the increasing opportunities for our families to access Wi-Fi, I thought we all thought that the giving out hotspots to the families in need, those who didn't have easy access to Wi-Fi, was successful or helpful. And to the extent that can be continued with or without a grant, we felt it was a good idea. And on the questions to be considered, I just wrote down a number of the questions, but are the schools free of mold now? We would like air quality issues addressed, including need for air conditioning and addition of air purifiers. And then there was a second discussion about, once the master plan is complete, how long are you either expecting or planning or anticipating it will take to implement either the plan in total or portions thereof, or the major portions? Do you have a timetable for West Hill, with or without grant funding? When would you expect that project could be commenced and or completed? And I think that covers most of what we said. Obviously, if any of the parents are listening in, I know Beth or Lisa, if I missed something, please jump on in. Oh, and I think, that's right. Thank you. My wife, always right. She said that there was a comment that we all agreed with, which was that the Stamford schools, at least the physical plant of the Stamford schools, should be at the quality of those of the surrounding towns, which they currently are not.
Thank you, Peter. Let's move to David Tate. You're still muted, Dave. Let's.
Thank you. So actually, many of the same issues came up. What I would just add to that, along the lines of funding, another one of the concerns was that we have funding related to programs, both for children with learning challenges, as well as enrichment programs for children who are excelling. And how do we continue to have them excel? Again, health and safety came up very much along the lines of the mechanical infrastructure and making sure that our schools are really up to date and healthy and safe places. I believe I heard from Alice concern about the outdoor structures. Specifically, they brought up Clunan not having its own park, but having to use Scalzi. So that was a concern that was held as well. Trying to think if there's anything else that we covered. Oh, yes, there actually was one other request that the city upload all the documents, copies of the RFP, information on SLAM, the vendor, the timeline for the work, and having all those documents publicly available would be very helpful.
Thank you, Dave. Let's move over to Emily.
Yes, so our group talked a lot about the health and safety concerns that others have brought up. We talked about making sure the schools don't have mold in them. They have state-of-the-art, HVAC systems, that they're very safe. But we also talked about kind of design and, better kind of learning environments for children, whether that means open space or flexible spaces, the right kind of, furniture, and how does that furniture fit into the spaces that will be built. And there was a bigger conversation around how the Elmcroft school was used, or how that space was used for school, and if there's anything that the schools learned from that administrators learned from that, how that could be used as a model for if there's any opportunities for using less traditional structures for schools, if Elmcroft could be kind of a model for that, if there's some lessons learned there. As far as challenges, is really brought up that the schools were built a long time ago, and they don't really have the adequate, whether it's outlets and the placement of outlets, as everyone has laptops or technology, and making sure that the school is built in a way that the schools are built in a way that is ready to adapt to new technology. So not just built for today, but built for the future and what we see in the future. And the group really talked a lot about just concerns in general, maybe a little bit off topic, but just concerns in general about how this is going to be implemented. And there's been a lot of talks about plans in the past, whether it was the plan, about 10 years ago, there was a look at the schools, and then also a few in the years past with the PPP plan, or the proposal there. There's some concerns that we're spending a lot of time, and when are we going to implement, and how soon will things be implemented, and how will those implementation plans affect the children that are in the schools today? So how can we move quickly in order to have a big impact on the students that are already in the school systems today? I think that just about covers it.
Thank you, Emily. I see Dr. Lucero, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm sharing out for our group, and a lot of the things have already been said, so I won't repeat them. But one of the things we did talk about is our parking situation and the buses, making sure that whatever we do, that we consider how the cars and buses will access our different sites, because if you drive past one of our schools, any given school in any given morning at arrival and dismissal, you'll be waiting a while. Thinking about how we can have air conditioning in all of our schools, and I think that was said several times. Also making our classrooms so that they're more 21st century, more transitional space than just a traditional classroom we have now, which brought up another point that what will our schools need to look like in 2050 versus 2021? And so, because if we're building schools for the next 30 years, what will our schools need to help look like? And I think one of the members of our committee talked about will people be teleporting into schools, and so we may not need certain things that we currently have in school. So it made me think about Meet George Jetson. Remember, we used to watch that, and we thought that that would be what it would look like in 2020, and we're not quite there yet, but close. We talked about the challenges of not being in neighborhood schools. So if you are assigned to Clunan and you live near the New York border, coming all the way down to Clunan to come to school is very difficult. So thinking about how we can either reconsider the thought of more quote unquote neighborhood type schools, or at least a reduction in transportation. But it was acknowledged that we really enjoy in Stamford the demographics and mixing of different neighborhoods together. So that would be important for us to consider. We also talked about the Welcome Center, and really the whole idea of it was thought that it was a good idea and something needed in a school district such as Stamford. Talked about open space, natural lighting would be really important to any projects that we went forward with, because when you really go into those schools that have that natural light, and the person was talking about Schofield, it just makes you feel better about being in school. I think it really goes to what someone else said in another group, that it really is, we want our school district to look like our neighboring school districts that have newer school buildings. And the last thing we talked about was the Wi-Fi issue, and really the need to make sure that if we are going to continue, which we are, to have one-to-one computers, that we have quality Wi-Fi, and maybe that Wi-Fi also would be helpful in our community, that they would be able to access it through our school buildings. So that is the highlights of what we said. And I think that's every group. Is that correct, Olympia? Great. So we want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. I think you got us off to a great start with the virtual meeting, our first virtual meeting. This went, I think the people who are on our planning committee, this went much better than what we thought it was going to go, because we didn't understand exactly how we were going to use the breakout groups, but I think it went really well. The only person who probably had a hard time is Gabrielle, who ended up in a group with all people who were either on the Board of Ed, the superintendent, Cindy Grafstein, all of us ended up in the same group. So Gabrielle, we apologize. If you come back again, you won't have to suffer with us in the same group. But for those of you who you can return to another group, this was the one that really dealt with a particular community, but we will repeat this same the same protocol. We'll do the same presentation and then have similar structure for the next 4 meetings that we have planned. But I want to thank you again for coming out this evening. This really is our first step to really moving forward with creating school buildings that match the wonderful education that our students are receiving inside of those school buildings. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you'd like to join us again, feel welcome. If not, please stay updated on our long-term facilities website. Thank you so much. Take care. Good night. Yes, sorry, Jay.
Same link for each meeting?
Yes.
Or
We made it very easy.
Yeah, if it's possible to resend it, because what happens, it goes way down on my email list. and I
We
wasn't able.
definitely will. And actually, Jay, because you are a committee member, it's actually on each of your invites.
Well, and so everybody should know it's also on the front page of the district website. I tagged it, so it's the first news item. So you can always just go to the Stamford Public Schools website and click on the first news item. It'll be there until our last session is over.
Great.
Thank you so much. Good night.